This week with Adobe Firefly, the sponsor of today's video, I wanted to do a little bit of a challenge to myself, and that was to create a looping video. Now, this wasn't as easy as I originally thought it would be, but by the end of this video, I'm going to show you how you can also have a go at creating a looping video using Adobe Firefly. Thank you to Adobe Firefly again for sponsoring this video. Let's get in and show you what we did. Now, first of all, for this video, I wanted to create a little character that kind of like walked through or went through different scenes, and I wanted to have a little like kind of coffee bean. So I started off with this one. We can see here I've loaded down the prompt. You can see the prompt there. If you want to pause, screenshot this, have a go at yourself, see what comes out, then please do. Now, whilst this one was really cute, I then wanted to kind of like change. So you can see I wanted more of this kind of like plushy kind of like character, still had the hat. I'm thinking, in November, I'm going to Miami to Adobe Max. So again, if you want to follow along on that journey, do follow along and click the subscribe button, because we've got a lot of stuff coming from there. But I wanted to kind of like give it that kind of Miami Vice kind of vibe. So this is where we kind of like started playing about with it. And I'm kind of like updating the prompts here. You can see this one I've got a slightly different prompt, but you can see his hat's still kind of like knitted, and I kind of wanted to go through. We've got different prompts. I really like this one where the kind of like the shape of the beam was down there. So all of this is generating and creating our character. We ended up going along. You can see here I've got the Adobe Max logo there from a few years ago, because I wanted to create this little pass, because he's going to be a little character at Adobe Max. And I ended up creating this one. So if I click load on this one, I've used different ones as a reference and then gone through and said, keep everything as it was, but change this particular aspect. And then I wanted to create different views of this little guy. So that's exactly what we've done. And I've used these different kind of like reference images that I'd created to create different views, and we've got some that worked really well. We've got other ones up here. Now what I did is I used those different styles or different reference images to actually then put this little character into different scenes. So we can see what I'm doing here is I've just created and used the reference images from that one where I've got the different views, and said I want this guy to be doing certain things, giving him different tasks. I've got him walking out of that hotel, being on the little kind of like patio area here, attending to a coffee bean area. And we kind of went through and started creating each of those kind of little areas that I wanted to kind of create. And we had different versions of this. And at this stage, again, we're literally just creating the images of what we want. So I thought for this one, I'd have kind of like 5 different images. So I've got him coming out of the hotel. We've got him like walking over to the veranda. We've got him planting a few bits here, and kind of like wanted to start building those up. Now, not all of these went according to plan, and some of these kind of like this one here, it ended up being upside down. I really like this one here where he's on the beach at the end. So what we've got is we've got it going earth, wind, water, fire. So I wanted to include those elements because I was thinking like, he's a little coffee bean. We're going to tell a little bit of a story with this one. And that's exactly what we've done. So I've got these different images that we've created, and that's where we start building up this storyboard using Firefly Boards. And that's one of the fun things I find about using Firefly Boards. So again, now I've got these different images, I wanted to kind of like lay out step by step what it is that we're going to have and how are we going to loop this video. So what I did is I started off, we've got the blank hotel there without our little character in it. We then start introducing the character into these kind of like reference frames, if you like, and we've just kind of like started building these up. If I click load on them, you can see I've clicked and selected the reference images and told it some of them are not like really big prompts. We've got this one here, which is where I wanted him kind of like being swept up into the air, and that's where he's then going to come down and he's going to land in this pool of water. He's going to climb out of the water onto the beach to then dry off, because that's when we've got there. So we've got the earth, wind, water, fire, and then we want him going back to the hotel and then walking back out of the hotel, which is where we're looping back to this. And that's exactly what I did. Now, how I did this was by using the first and the last frames. You can see we've got this little chap here. I'm going to click load on this one. And you can see we've got the first and the last images, and I've just asked it to kind of like animate between the two, so for it to kind of like fill in the blanks. I left it kind of quite simple. As I tried to overcomplicate it, it kind of like started going a little bit more strange and odd in between. I found that just asking it to animate between each of the two clips actually gave me some better results. So we can see here, we've got this little chap. He's coming out, he's walking across onto the patio, and then he digs into the soil. And that again is then where this one then starts off. He punches down into the ground, flies up into the air. He's on the edge of the patio area, and then a gust of wind catches him and he's going to fly off into that water. Now, what I found was actually the easiest way to do these and to do these transitions was to actually use the timeline editor inside of Adobe Firefly. So let's switch into that and let me show you where we went from here. This is actually my finished timeline. We've even added in some sound effects, we've recorded a voiceover and also some music all inside of Adobe Firefly, and I'm going to show you how you do those. But first of all, I wanted to show you these kind of like transitions between frames. So what we've got is we've got this one here. Let's say I wanted to do this one again. We're going to click on this frame here, we're going to come back, and you can see here we've got the character walks out, and this is where we could then choose these reference frames. So oops, so we could choose the first frame, okay, and that's where we could then select this option here, which is where it's the current frame. So we'd go to the end of the actual scene here, which is where we were at, where he's flying off, and that's where we'd say the first frame is going to be the current frame, and then the last frame would be the one where I'm then loading up the where I want him to transition into. So I would then copy in that, and you can choose from your device or from your cloud storage, and that's where you can then add those in there. So if you've generated them somewhere else, you can upload them or you can select them from your cloud storage, and that's where we then started generating these. So if I just quickly kind of like scrub through, you can see he walks out onto the patio, he booms up, he flies off into the water, he goes into the water, comes out of the water, and I am going to play this for you in a moment. It drives off a little bit, walks into the hotel, and then walks back out of the hotel, and that's where then he's going to then come back out of the hotel and then start that whole loop again. Now what I did to test this loop was I created this first part here. If I show you, I created this first part here that I'm just highlighting here. I exported that, and then that exported video I've then re-imported that as another video. So we can see here, as we come out, you can see he comes out of the hotel.
Back to the soil, kid. The name's Vercotti, Bean Vercotti.
And that's where he then loops. That's the looping point. So if I go back to the beginning, I'm going to play this whole thing for you. So if you want to skip through this and skip past this, you can do, but I'm going to play the whole thing for you as a loop and show you it looping on the timeline. And you can see on here where we've got the voiceovers, the sound effects, and also the music, all of which I generated inside of Adobe Firefly. Let me play this through for you.
The name's Vercotti, Bean Vercotti, Chief Coffee Inspector. They told me the perfect cup didn't exist in this town. I told them to give me a hat and a shirt loud enough, and I'd find it. Started at the soil. Every good cup starts at the soil. Then the wind had opinions. So did the water. By sunset, I was dry, roasted, and holding the only thing in Miami worth holding. Case closed, except it's never closed. Not here, not with a loop like this one. Back to the soil, kid. The name's Vercotti, Bean Vercotti, Chief Coffee Inspector.
And that, you can see, is where it loops. I was really impressed with this. Now, when it comes to creating sound effects, there's a way to do that inside of Adobe Firefly, you can just come over, actually this is the voiceover, so if you come over to the generate speech option inside of Adobe Firefly, you've got all these different voices to select from. You can then add in your voice or your script here. If you select them, you can even add in different tones sometimes. So if I click on this one here, you can see here, this is one where we've added in a different tone. So that's where that option is. So if you're using the Firefly option, that's where you can add the different tones. However, if you're using the 11 Labs option inside of Adobe Firefly, then that's not where you can actually add the tones on there. That's a different thing, but we've got all the different voices here. We can change the speed, the stability, similarity of it. We've got the style exaggeration, and we've got speaker boost, and all of those things there. So to get to the voiceover, the sound effects, and also the music, you're going to come to the Adobe Firefly homepage. You're going to come over to audio, and you can see you've got them here. The generate soundtrack is the music that you heard in the background. Let me quickly show you that one. So in here, you can actually choose the type of music that you're wanting to create, and the vibe, the style, the purpose, change the energy, the tempo, and the generation. I think the generation goes up to 5 minutes. So if we just whack that all the way up to 5 minutes, I think that's as far as it goes. Yeah, you can see there, it goes up to 5 minutes of audio on there. If I click back, we can then come down to audio, and this is where you can generate the speech, which I just showed you a moment ago. So in here, you've got all of those different options. When it loads, you can see as you start typing here, you can see the screen changes a little bit, and that's where you can then highlight your things, add a tone, you can fix pronunciation, and then also click play to get a playback of what it actually sounds like before you click the generate option. We've then got under the audio option, we can do voice to sound effects. Now this is a really fun one, and I had lots of fun with this, because you can actually just describe your audio and generate it, but you can also then record what you wanted it to do. So I asked it to create things like water splashes or walking on the ground, and as I'm playing it back, I can see, and I'm going like crunch, 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 and that's where I could then generate those sound effects. And the good thing is each of those, when we're in the timeline editor inside of Adobe Firefly, they just come up under your generation history. So you can see they're all here under your generation history. If you've created one somewhere else, you can see here we've created this one here. If I then click that to add that to my favorites, you see as I come back here, I can click on this one here, click on my favorites, and it makes it easier for me to actually find those things that I've created that are my favorites inside of the timeline editor here. Now I do have a full video on the timeline editor. If you want to check that out, I'll put that link down in the description before. If you've got any questions about using Firefly, generating things in Firefly, drop those down in the comments as well. And until next time, thank you very much, and bye for now.